Well, good morning everyone, Yorkshire Gamer here, and today we're going to have a Troops on Parade review of my new 28mm Italian Wars army, based on, very loosely on an army of the Papal States, and going off to see its first action at Leeds Wargame Club this evening. I've been involved in a painting challenge called the Analogue Hobbies painting challenge. It's now in its 10th year, and it takes place in the winter months between November and March, and it's a group of 100 or so like-minded gamers who get together to encourage each other through the winter months to paint. And most of this is a result of that endeavour. And I've managed to get quite a decent chunk of figures painted in the last 3 months. So much so I can't even get them all in the same shot. So we're going to have a look in a second, a little bit closer at some of the units involved. But at the moment you can see these 4 command bases at the start, at the front there. We'll have a look at those in a little bit more detail shortly. A gun, a couple of units of shot, one of crossbow and one of handgun, and then on the far left we've got our posse of lightish cavalry, Stradiots and mounted crossbowmen. In the centre you can see the massed pike. There's 3 pike blocks in there and then a couple of other foot units, and we're going to have to turn the camera to see the mounted gendarme or condottieri section of the troops. So we'll move the camera angle and we'll have a look at some of the individual units. So let's look at the command bases initially. The one on the left has 2 figures from the Perry's Metal Miniatures clergy, a priest on a horse and a cardinal on foot, and then probably one of the revelations of this project has been the light cavalry, Perry's light cavalry box plastic set that I've decided to use as standard bearers. An extremely cheap version or cheap method of obtaining standard bearers for the army. So nice little papal command base there, and then moving along. This is the command base for my light cavalry section, and it's got a flag from Venice, who were famous for employing Stradiots and light cavalry. And another papal command base, this one with the priest is on the foot reading from the good book, and the cardinal is on a donkey, looking for some relevant passages of the Bible to go out and smack the enemy over the head with a big stick. Again, a standard bearer from Perry's. And then finally my gendarme commander in his finery and armoury, and another standard bearer from Perry's. The flags are from a company called Pete's Flags, who sell, I think, solely on the internet, and are available on eBay, and highly recommended for this period by myself. Next up we have the shot unit, and this one with the arquebus, the used in the period, based out in a sort of a skirmish type order, and in a red and white livery with some papal cross keys on there, just to indicate the army that they are fighting for. Second unit of shot are crossbow, and these are in the colours of the Swiss canton of Lucerne, which will fit in with the pike blocks that you'll see shortly. And these figures are Perry's. Virtually all of the army is, and these are a mix of the plastic figures that are available in the mercenary box set, plastics and some of the metals that are done in the European Armies range by the same company. So let's move on to the light cavalry now. I've got 4 units of light cavalry, each of 12 figures in this army to date, and the ones at the front rank that you can see are light cavalry, or representative of the squires who would operate in a lance with the gendarmes. They are the Paris plastic figures again, Pete's flag on the standard bearer, and there's no particular family livery or crests on these chaps. They're designed really as a 2 or 3-fold unit within the army. I'm either going to use them as they are, as a standalone unit, or have them behind the gendarme as a second rank of squires, if you like, behind the mainly armed knights. Or mix and match them to flesh out the gendarme units. All my gendarmes are in 6s at the moment. One of the rule sets I'm looking at has them in 8s, so I can just drop one of these bases in and make up the unit that way, rather than going and buying tons more gendarmes from Foundry, which we'll get to shortly. Just move down to the side of the unit now, and we're looking at some of the Stradiates. These fierce fighters were used as light cavalry initially from Venice, through Venice, hired as mercenaries, and had a fearsome reputation during the course of the war. I've got 2 units, one of which is armed with a light lance, and a second one which is at the back here, you can see, and they are armed with bows. So finally, the final unit tucked away in the middle there with the elephant motif on their flag is a unit of mounted crossbows, which again is from the plastic light cavalry set, probably one of the most versatile sets going, and there are some figures in there from the metal range as well. Perry's do a series of metal crossbowmen that can fit on plastic horses that you can buy separately. Just while we're looking at the horses, always, so since my late teens, I've painted horses with oil paints in the Peter Gilder fashion. That's putting a base coat of a lower or lighter colour on the horse initially, allowing that to dry completely, and then adding a darker colour over the top, and then using a piece of tissue paper to wipe off the excess from the outer layer, leaving a shaded effect. And as you can see from these horses, works perfectly well. It's extremely quick to do in terms of work time. It's the problem with it is the amount of time that the oils take to dry. And for this army, what I've done is I've used an acrylic base coat rather than an oil base coat, which has cut down on drying time considerably, and used an airbrush so that I was able to do 80 to 100 horses in one go, in one day. Dry brush the base colours in the morning using probably got 10 or 15 different types of brown, and then in the afternoon go upstairs, get the oil paints out, slap them on, wipe off, and put them on a shelf to dry. And then when you come to do all the units later on, it's a lot easier just picking 6, 12 ready-made horses off the shelf already painted, just to add the horse furniture details in. So that is probably my top tip of the build of this army. Next up we have the foot contingent, and with the super quick method I found to painting the horses, I ended up doing more cavalry and less foot. But nevertheless, I still managed to get 3 pike blocks and a couple of other auxiliary units done. And the first pike block that we're looking at is the Papal pike block, as I've called it. Red and white livery of the arquebusmen that we saw earlier on, and cross keys dotted on the clothing as livery, and then we've got the flags of Julius II, the warrior pope, is the politest name he probably had. The pike block itself made up of 28 Perry's miniatures, and it's a mix of the pikemen that come in the mercenary plastic box set and chaps the metal figures who come in the 28mm European Armies range. One feature that has been pointed out, which has been a regular one of mine, is the extended front base. I'll just pan out just a little bit to fit that in. There's pros and cons to it. My argument is that the pikes on these chaps are real. These are steel pikes with pointy ends, and trust me, they hurt, and I have cut myself on them on a number of occasions, and especially my English Civil War army, I'd seem to end up with plasters all over the place with blood pouring out of my fingers at the end of the day. But we don't mind bleeding for king and country. Not that Parliament lot. They're doing amazingly well at the moment, aren't they? God save the king. So we have... well, I have added this extended base on just to protect the figures initially, but also to protect the players. I don't want somebody suing me for £1 million because they've pricked the end of the finger with one of these boys. And I think they do look particularly nice. Causes a bit of an issue in relation to where do you measure from, but really, if you're playing with people who are arguing about where you're measuring from on a base, I would start playing games with somebody else. So there we go. So that's the Papal pike block. Next door to those guys, we've got another Papal pike block, this time decked out in the flags of the Borgia family. And these figures are a bit of a rarity in this army. These are from a company called Tag, the assault group, and I have to say, when I was painting them, I wasn't convinced. I didn't think they suited my particular style of painting very well, something that the Perry's miniatures do. The way that they sculpt their figures just works perfectly with my style of painting. These guys, a little flatter, a little bit less detail or crevicing on the clothing. I thought that's not going to work. However, I'm actually quite pleased with these, and they've turned out really well. And I will certainly be adding some more TAG units to the army. And then when you look at them in size comparison with the Perrys, who are next door, slightly smaller maybe, but not a lot of difference in it. And I think on the same table, there's no major difference between the two. I certainly wouldn't mix them together in a unit, but as they are on their own, I think superb. And then the final pike block is from the Swiss canton of Lucerne, similar to the crossbowmen that we've had earlier on. And these are again Perry's plastics and metals mixed together. I bought some of the extra heads to add a bit of difference into the unit. Same as the Papal pike blocks. There are 48 figures, 8 figures a base, based on 60 by 50s. Apart from the front bit, it's on 110 by 50 by 60 mil. Just giving that extra length to protect the pike blocks. Then we've got a couple of non-pike units, if you like. First one is this one, a sword and shield unit. Again, Perry's, all metal, these figures, and done out in the Papal livery again, and something a little bit different to the pike that we've seen previously. And then next up is a unit of halberdiers, all Perry's metals, including some of their Swiss command, done up in the Swiss canton of Uri with the famous bull on the flags. These have got 6 figures per base. just to give them a little bit more operating room. And some rules have independent units of halberdiers independently. Others will have them within the pipe block itself, that come out and fight on the flanks, or fight initial skirmishes prior to the pipe blocks coming out and meeting, depending on which set of rules you're using. So these guys are quite flexible. We can split them up into individual bases, or we can use them as a single unit. Now finally we have the strike force, the Italian condottieri, who are in units of 6. What I can read, they tended to operate in sort of squadron size or half squadron size, 100, 120 men. Sometimes, or mostly, based around a family or a particular city. And I've kept that theme with each of these. I've used again Pete's flags from the internet on eBay, as mentioned. These figures are, well, the first 5 ranks are Foundry, probably the standard, if you like, for gendarmes or armoured cavalry of this period. The castings foes have been around for a long time, but they are absolutely superb and stand up to the test of time perfectly. The only quibble with them really is that there's not enough variation in the horses, but they come from a different time period really. Plenty of variation within the figures itself, as you can see from the unit there. But the last 2 units at the back are from the Perry's miniatures plastic box sets, and we'll have a little bit closer look at the way the 2 units or the 2 figure types mix fairly shortly. So apologies for shaky cam on this one. I'm just going to go down the line of troops. First of all, Papal unit, flags Julius the Pope, the warrior Pope in the front line. Then I should have written down the names before I did this. Another family unit behind with the flags. Same again there. And what I've done with these is when I've drawn or when I've painted the units, I've used the flags as a cue for the colours. And as you probably see on the unit at the front there, I've used some of the motifs on the flags just to put on the horse livery, just to give them a bit of individuality. A flag unit from the Florentine League there. Another unit back with rose motif, green and red and white. And then at the back we've got 2 more units. These are the Perry miniatures though. I've stolen a trumpet or herald for the musician next to the commander from the Gripping Beast Arab Spearman, Arab Bowman box set. I had loads of those left, so I've been nicking them and using them for these. Front unit is Julius II, the Red Pope unit, as I like to call that one, and behind is the Borgia gendarme. So if we just sit side by side next to the units, the Perry are, I didn't quite realise this, normally look down at the side of them. The Perrys are quite a bit bigger. But actually when they're next to each other, you don't see a massive difference, I have to say, on the table. Again, similar with the Tag and the Perrys, I would not use them in the same unit, but I would use them on the same table. So there we go, there's the gendarmes. I shall be adding to that slowly over time, but the main bulk of the army is now completed. So I hope you've enjoyed this little trip around my new toy, my new 28mm Italian Wars Army, and they're off to Leeds War Games Club tonight to die horrifically, as most armies do on their first day out. Thanks for listening, and tune in to Yorkshire TV again soon.